My daughter has been dead for 2 years. I know this because I was the one who identified her body. So when I saw her walk out of the sliding doors at Kroger last Tuesday, I dropped every single orange in my hands. I didn't scream. I didn't run to her. I just stood there in the produce section, oranges rolling across the linoleum, watching the back of her head disappear toward the parking lot. My body forgot how to work. My brain kept repeating the same word over and over. Impossible, 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 like a skipping record that couldn't move forward. Her name is Serena. My only child. She would be 34 now. I need to back up. I need to tell this right, because even now, sitting in my kitchen in Decatur, Georgia, I still have moments where I convince myself I imagined the whole thing. That grief does strange things to a woman's mind, that 63-year-old widows who live alone sometimes see what they desperately want to see. But I didn't imagine it, and I have the restraining order to prove it. My husband passed away 11 years ago, heart attack, sudden, no warning. One morning he was reading the paper at the kitchen table, and by the afternoon he was gone. After that, it was just me and Serena, and we were close in the way that mothers and daughters become close, when it's only the two of them holding the world together. She called me every Sunday. She came home for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and sometimes just because she felt like it. She was the kind of daughter other mothers envied, and mine weren't shy about saying so. She moved to Nashville after college for a job in healthcare administration. Met a man named Owen. I didn't love Owen, but I kept that to myself because Serena loved him enough for both of us. He was the kind of man who answered a question you didn't ask and never quite answered the one you did. Slippery. That's the word I always used in my head. Slippery like a fish you think you have hold of and then don't. They dated for 3 years. Then, one October, she called me on a Wednesday, not a Sunday, which should have told me something, and her voice was very flat, very careful, and she said, "Mom, Owen and I broke up." I said, "Oh, sweetheart," and waited. She said, "It's fine, I'm fine. I just wanted to tell you before the holidays." I flew up to Nashville that weekend. She looked thin. She looked like she hadn't been sleeping, but she also looked like she was holding something back, the way she sometimes did as a teenager when she'd already made a decision and didn't want me trying to talk her out of it. I didn't push. I should have pushed. She died 8 months later. A car accident, the police said. Rural highway outside of Cookeville, Tennessee. She'd been visiting a friend, apparently. The car went off the road in the middle of the night. The friend wasn't with her. There was no skid marks, no evidence of another vehicle, no phone activity in the hour before the crash. Just Serena's car at the bottom of a ravine and Serena inside it. I flew to Nashville. I identified her body. I planned her funeral. I stood at her grave in a black dress in April rain, and I let them lower my daughter into the ground. That was 2 years ago. I'm going to tell you something that I haven't told many people. Grief has a texture. It's not just sadness. It's this thick, pressing weight that sits on your chest when you wake up and doesn't fully lift until you fall asleep. And even then it follows you into dreams. The first year I moved through my days like I was underwater. The second year the water got a little shallower. I started walking again in the mornings. I started cooking real meals instead of whatever required the least effort. My neighbour Wanda checked on me and I let her. My sister drove down from Charlotte twice and we watched old movies and didn't talk about Serena, and somehow that helped more than talking did. I was doing better. That's what I told my doctor. That's what I told my doctor. The Tuesday I saw her at Kroger, I had gone to pick up oranges for a fruit salad I was making from my church group's Thursday potluck. That's how ordinary that morning was. I was thinking about whether to add strawberries. I was deciding between 2 different bags of grapes. I was a 63-year-old woman doing her grocery shopping on a Tuesday morning with nothing on her mind but fruit salad. Then I saw her. She was about 40 feet away, near the floral section by the entrance. She had the same walk. That particular way Serena had of moving with her shoulders slightly forward, like she was always leaning just a little into whatever came next. She was wearing a yellow jacket. Serena owned a yellow jacket. Not the same one, maybe, but the same particular shade of yellow that Serena always said was her lucky colour. She went through the automatic doors and was gone. I left the oranges on the floor. I left my cart. I walked outside into the parking lot and looked in every direction, and I didn't see her. I stood there until I realized I was shaking. I went back inside. I picked up the oranges. I checked out. I drove home. And then I sat in my car in my own driveway for 45 minutes because I genuinely could not decide whether I was losing my mind. I went back to Kroger on Thursday, and on Saturday. I told myself I was shopping. I know now I was looking. I didn't see her again either time. I started to let it go. I told myself it was grief playing tricks. I told myself that I was projecting, that I'd seen a woman who walked a certain way, and my heart had done what broken hearts do and filled in the rest. I went to the Thursday potluck. I brought the fruit salad. I laughed at something my friend Loretta, not in my story, just a real person I know. My friend said, and the laugh felt real. I thought I was going to be okay. Then my sister called. She was the one who started it, actually, though she had no idea. She called to catch up, and somewhere in the conversation she mentioned that she'd heard through a mutual cousin that Owen Serena's ex, the slippery one, had moved to Atlanta. Not far from me, she said. Isn't that something, she said. I said yes. Isn't that something? After I hung up, I sat with that information for a long time. Owen in Atlanta. Serena, who looked like my daughter in a yellow jacket walking out of a Kroger 12 minutes from my house. I'm not a woman who believes in coincidences. I grew up with a mother who said that coincidences are just patterns you haven't figured out yet. And I am 63 years old, and I have seen enough of the world to know that my mother was right. I went back to that Kroger the following Tuesday, same time. I told myself that if I was wrong, I was a grieving old woman who needed more therapy, and that was fine, and I would go home and call my doctor and make an appointment. But I needed to know. I was in the cereal aisle when I saw her again. This time she was closer. 20 feet, maybe less. She was looking at something on her phone, and the light from the screen caught the side of her face, and I stopped breathing. It was her mouth. Serena had a particular way her mouth sat when she was concentrating. Slightly open, lower lip just barely forward. This woman had that exact expression. I have looked at that expression for 34 years. I know it, the way I know my own name. She looked up, and for 1/2 second our eyes met, and I saw it, this flash of something. Not recognition, more like alarm. She looked away immediately and started walking faster. I followed her. I'm not ashamed of it. I followed her all the way to the self-checkout, keeping a few people between us, watching the back of her head, watching the yellow jacket, watching her hands as she scanned her items. Her hands. Serena had a small scar on her left hand from a bicycle accident when she was 7. I couldn't see from where I was standing. She paid and left quickly. I abandoned my basket and followed her outside. She got into a grey Honda Civic and pulled out of the parking lot fast, faster than the speed bumps really allowed. I got a partial plate. 3 letters, 2 numbers. I stood in that parking lot and I didn't feel crazy anymore. I felt certain. I want to be honest about what the weeks that followed did to me. I was not peaceful about it. I was not calm. I slept maybe 4 hours a night. I ate because Wanda came over and made me eat. I second-guessed myself every other hour, went from absolutely certain to completely convinced I was inventing a story because the grief was too much. Those 2 states took turns. It was exhausting. But I did something practical. I hired a private investigator. His name is not important. What is important is that he was thorough and he was discreet, and he found her in 9 days. She was living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Smyrna, about 25 minutes from me. She was going by the name Claire. She worked remotely. Some kind of data entry. Nothing that required an ID badge or a work building. She had no social media presence under that name. She had, as far as he could tell, very few connections in the city. She had one frequent visitor, a man who drove a black Jeep Cherokee and whose face the investigator eventually photographed clearly enough for me to recognize. Owen. I looked at that photograph for a long time. I thought about the slippery way he answered questions. I thought about how he'd disappeared completely after Serena's funeral. Sent a card, didn't come, and then simply ceased to exist as far as I was concerned. I thought about Serena's voice on that Wednesday call, flat and careful, holding something back. I thought about whose car had gone off that highway, whose car, with whose ID in the glove box, at the bottom of a ravine in Cookeville, Tennessee. I called the investigator back and told him to keep going. What came out over the next 3 weeks was this. Serena and Owen had, together, taken out a life insurance policy on Serena approximately 14 months before the accident. A $750,000 policy. Owen was the sole beneficiary. The policy had a 2-year contestability clause, which is standard. It means the insurance company can investigate and deny the claim for up to 2 years if they find evidence of fraud. The payout had been approved 11 months after her death. 13 months after the policy was taken out, Owen had collected $750,000. And Serena, my daughter, my only child, my Sunday phone calls and Christmas visits, was alive in Smyrna, Georgia, living under a false name, apparently having faked her own death to help her ex-boyfriend commit insurance fraud. Or to help herself. I still don't know whose idea it was. Some days I think it was his. Some days I look at the facts, and I know she had to have been a willing participant. She identified her own dental records somehow. She arranged for a body. I still cannot let myself think too long about that part. She let me fly to Nashville and look at what I thought was her face and say, yes, that's my daughter. She let me bury her. I drove to Smyrna on a Wednesday afternoon. I didn't call ahead. I didn't tell anyone where I was going except a note I left on my kitchen counter with the address, because I may have been furious, but I was not stupid. I knocked on the door of apartment 4C. There was a long pause. Then the door opened and she was standing there and she was alive, and she was looking at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Not guilt exactly. More like someone who has been waiting for a thing to happen and is almost relieved that it finally has. "Mom," she said. I didn't hug her. I want to be clear about that. Every instinct in my body wanted to grab her and hold her because she was alive and she was my child, and for 2 years I had been walking around with a hole in my chest where she used to be. But I looked at her face and I thought about that funeral. About that grave, about the 45 minutes I sat in my driveway shaking, and I kept my hands at my sides. I said, "You're going to tell me everything." She did. Not all at once, and not without crying, and not without trying at first to soften it, to frame it as something that happened to her, rather than something she did. Owen had been controlling, she said. He'd gotten into serious debt, she said. She'd been scared of him. She'd felt trapped. I listened to all of it. I kept my face neutral. And then I asked her the one question I actually needed answered. Did you ever plan to come back? She looked at the floor. That was my answer. I told her I needed to step outside for some air. She nodded. I think she thought I was overwhelmed, which I was, but not in the way she expected. I walked to my car, I took out my phone, I called the police. The investigation that followed was handled by multiple agencies, the local police, the Tennessee State Police, the FBI because of the insurance fraud. I gave them everything the investigator had found. I gave them his documentation, his photographs, the timeline, the policy information. I told them about Owen. I told them about the Jeep Cherokee. I told them about the grey Honda Civic and the partial plate and the cereal aisle and all of it. Owen was arrested at his apartment in Buckhead 4 days later. Serena, I cannot call her Claire, I will never call her Claire, was taken into custody the same afternoon. The insurance company filed a civil suit immediately. The $750,000 is in legal dispute. I've been told that both of them face federal charges. I've been told the sentencing guidelines for insurance fraud of this scale are significant. I have been told a lot of things by a lot of people in the months since, and I have nodded and processed them in pieces because there's only so much a person can absorb at once. I have not spoken to my daughter since the afternoon I walked out of apartment 4C and called the police. I have gotten letters. I have not opened them. People ask me how I'm doing, and I tell them I'm okay, because what else do you say? I'm okay is not a lie, exactly. I get up in the morning, I go to church on Sundays, I take my morning walks, I make fruit salad for the potluck, and I laugh at things Wanda says, and sometimes, for whole hours at a time, I feel like myself. But grief is a strange thing to have twice for the same person. The first time I grieved Serena, I was grieving my daughter. The second time, this time, I'm grieving someone I thought I knew, someone I thought was mine. And I don't know which loss is heavier. I haven't figured that out yet. Maybe I never will. What I know is this: I did not imagine it. I did not let grief make me passive or confused or willing to look away from something true, because the truth was too hard to hold. I stood in that parking lot with shaking hands and partial license plates and an absolute refusal to tell myself I was crazy, and I followed every thread until I had the whole picture. My mother used to say that the hardest thing about the truth is not finding it. It's deciding what to do once you have it. I found it. I decided. I'm still learning to live with both of those things. But I'm living. And some mornings, when the light comes through the kitchen window just right, and my coffee is hot and the neighborhood is quiet, that feels like enough. It has to be enough. It's what I have. I've thought a lot about what it actually costs to do the right thing when the right thing breaks your heart. When I walked out of apartment 4C and called the police, I wasn't numb. I wasn't detached. I was standing on a sidewalk in Smyrna, Georgia, with my hands shaking and my chest full of something I still don't have a word for. Grief and fury and love all pressed together until they were indistinguishable from each other. I called anyway, and I think that's the part people misunderstand when they hear a story like mine. They think it must have been easy because she wronged me. It wasn't easy. It was the hardest thing I have ever done, and I have buried a husband and stood at what I believed was my daughter's grave. What I know now, what 2 years of loss and 6 months of slowly rebuilding a real life have taught me, is that the choices we make when we are in pain reveal exactly who we are, not the choices we make when things are comfortable, not the decisions that cost us nothing, the ones that cost everything. Serena made her choices under pressure, and those choices told me something true about who she had become. I made mine under the same pressure, and I have to live with what they say about me too. That's not a comfortable thought, but it's an honest one, and I'd rather carry an honest thought than a comfortable lie. There's something I've come to understand about people who deceive the ones who love them most. It rarely starts with malice. It starts with fear, fear of consequences, fear of being seen as a failure, fear of asking for help and being told no. Owen brought that fear into Serena's life and she let it take root. I don't say that to excuse her. I say it because understanding how something grows doesn't mean you have to let it stay in your garden. I did not let it stay. The hardest wisdom I found in all of this is that loving someone and holding them accountable are not opposites. I love my daughter. I will probably love her until I stop breathing. And I called the police. Both of those things are true at the same time, and they don't cancel each other out. I used to think that real love meant protecting someone from consequences. I don't believe that anymore. Real love. The durable kind. The kind that actually serves another person. sometimes looks like refusing to be the last person who enables the worst version of them. There is also something to be said for the woman who trusted her own eyes. I stood in a parking lot with shaking hands and 6 strangers walking past me, and I did not talk myself out of what I had seen. Grief will tell you that you're imagining things. Loneliness will tell you that you want something so badly you've invented it. I listened to those voices for 3 weeks, and then I stopped. I hired someone. I followed the thread. I was right. Trust the things you know in your body before your mind can explain them. That's not recklessness. That's intelligence of a different kind, and it deserves to be taken seriously. I'm not healed. I want to be clear about that. I'm not standing here on the other side of all of it with some clean resolution and a lesson neatly tied up with a bow. I still reach for my phone on Sunday mornings out of habit. I still sometimes see yellow and feel something shift in my chest before I can stop it. But I get up. I walk. I make fruit salad and I let wonder make me eat, and I go to church and I live my life because it is still my life, and no one, not Owen, Serena, gets to take that from me too. That's what I chose, and I choose it again.